The flight crew and the passengers describe him as an unremarkable guy.
Inside the plane, FBI agents find 66 latent fingerprints, but can't identify any of them.
So here is the deal. Dan Cooper did not just leave a plane, he left a trail of rare metals and genetic material.
They also find Cooper's black clip-on tie and tie clip, some cigarette butts, and 2 of the 4 parachutes. That's it. That's all they have.
Everyone's obsessed with the $200,000. But the real treasure was the clip-on tie found on his seat. Researchers have spent years mapping the particles on that fabric. They found strontium and titanium, which were hands down the rarest materials on Earth at the time. This evidence points to a man who lived in a world of high-tech manufacturing and secret projects. This discovery is the key to unlocking the greatest unsolved mystery in the United States. The microscopic truth of Seat 18C. The story usually starts with a man and a bomb, but the real ending began with a microscope. On Wednesday, November 24th, 1971, a man using the name Dan Cooper paid $20 for a one-way ticket. He was heading from Portland to Seattle on Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305. He looked like any other businessman in his mid-40s, wearing a black raincoat, brown shoes, and a white shirt with a black tie. But get this, he was carrying a briefcase that contained what looked like red sticks and a mess of wires. After the plane took off, he ordered a bourbon and soda and handed a note to a stewardess. When she did not look at it right away, he told her he had a bomb. Basically, the most famous hijacking in history had just started. But here is the catch. While the world focused on the money and the jump, the FBI kept one vital piece of evidence. Before Cooper lowered the rear stairs and jumped into a freezing rainstorm, he took off his black clip-on tie. For years, it sat in an evidence locker, just a cheap piece of fabric from JCPenney. But decades later, a group of amateur scientists called the Citizen Sleuths got permission to look at it. They used an electron microscope to see things that are invisible to the human eye. What they found was a total game changer. There were over 100,000 particles stuck to that tie. Among them were rare earth elements like titanium, cerium, and strontium sulfide. In 1971, these were not things you would find on a normal person. These were space-age metals used in very specific labs. It is not that simple, though, because titanium was extremely rare back then. It was mostly used in the development of supersonic transport planes. This was high-level engineering. The presence of these metals means the man we call D.B. Cooper likely worked in a place where these metals were being ground or melted. He was not a common criminal. He was likely an engineer or a manager in a high-tech manufacturing plant. This detail is a massive wow factor because it narrows the search from the entire country to a few specific factories. He might have even been part of the team building the very planes he ended up hijacking. The tie was like a silent witness, holding on to the dust of his daily life. The researchers also looked for DNA. Even though many people had handled the tie over the years, they managed to pull a partial profile. This genetic footprint has been used to rule out hundreds of suspects who did not match the code. The crazy part is that the particles on the tie also included bismuth and aluminum, which were used in specific types of electrical work. This paints a picture of a man who was very comfortable with technology and complex systems. He knew exactly how the Boeing 727 functioned. He knew how to operate the rear stairs, a detail that even some pilots were not familiar with at the time. He was a professional, hands down. What most people do not realize is that the tie evidence is the most credible link we have to his real life. It suggests a man who wore a suit to work every day in a specialized industrial environment. He was not a drifter. He was a man with a career and a background in aerospace. The Thai tells us he was likely an insider. He knew the flight paths, the altitudes, and the mechanics of the aircraft. This was a calculated move by someone who understood the risks and the science behind the jump. The microscopic evidence is finally peeling back the layers of this ghost. The Thai was not the only thing he left, but it was the only thing that held his physical identity. The midnight jump into the unknown. The heist itself was a masterpiece of calm and control. Cooper demanded $200,000 in $20 bills and 4 parachutes. He also wanted a fuel truck waiting in Seattle to refuel the plane for a trip to Mexico City. When the plane landed, he let the 36 passengers go in exchange for the cash and the gear. He kept a few crew members on board and gave very specific instructions. He told the pilot to fly below 10,000 feet and to keep the landing gear down. He also ordered the flaps to be set at 15 degrees. These are very technical details that ensured the plane would fly slow enough for someone to jump out safely. Yeah, about that jump. A little after 8 p.m., somewhere over the rugged woods of the Pacific Northwest, Cooper did the unthinkable. He walked to the back of the plane, lowered the stairs, and disappeared into a 200-mile-per-hour wind. It was pitch black outside and raining hard. He was wearing loafers and a trench coat, which is not exactly the outfit you want for a high-altitude jump. This has led many to wonder if he even made it to the ground. But get this, he had specifically asked for the money in a knapsack. He was prepared to carry a heavy load while plummeting through the air. The area where he jumped was filled with thick forests and freezing rivers. The FBI launched a massive search, but they found nothing. No body, no parachute, and no money. It was as if he had simply evaporated. For years, people theorized that he perished in the woods. But here is the catch. No experienced jumper would have taken the gear he took. One of the parachutes he was given was a training chute that was sewn shut. If he had used that one, his story would have ended very quickly. However, the functioning chute he chose was a military-style model that was not steerable. He was basically at the mercy of the wind. The search for Cooper, known as the Northwest Hijacking or Norjack case, lasted for decades. The FBI investigated over 1,000 suspects. They followed leads to every corner of the country. They checked the serial numbers of every $20 bill that turned up in circulation. But for 9 long years, there was absolutely no sign of the money. Then, in 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was digging a fire pit on a beach called Tina Bar. He found 3 rotted bundles of cash. There was $5,800 in total, and the serial numbers matched the ransom money perfectly. This discovery only added to the mystery. The bills were found along the Columbia River, miles away from where the FBI thought Cooper had jumped. Some people thought the money washed down the river over time. Others believed Cooper might have buried it there. The crazy part is that the rubber bands holding the bundles together were still intact, which meant the money had not been floating for very long. It felt like a clue left on purpose, or a sign that the money had been lost during the jump. Either way, it was the only piece of the ransom ever found. The money on the beach proved the heist was real, but it did not lead to the man, the faces behind the alias. The search for the real Dan Cooper led to some of the most interesting characters in American history. One of the top suspects was a man named Richard Floyd McCoy. Just 5 months after the Cooper hijacking, McCoy did almost the exact same thing. He hijacked a plane, demanded $500,000, and jumped out the back stairs of a Boeing 727. He even used the same phrase, "no funny stuff," in his note. He was a veteran and a skilled skydiver, but the FBI eventually ruled him out because his physical appearance did not match the descriptions given by the flight attendants. Another compelling suspect was Duane Weber. On his deathbed in 1995, he pulled his wife close and told her he was Dan Cooper. After he passed away, his wife started noticing strange things. He had nightmares about leaving fingerprints on a plane. He had an old Northwest Airlines ticket in his belongings. He even had a knee injury that he claimed came from a jump. While he fit the physical description and had a criminal past, the FBI could never find a solid link to the DNA on the tie. It's a common theme in this case. People want to be Cooper, but the evidence usually says no. Then there was Kenneth Christensen. He was a former paratrooper and worked as a flight purser for Northwest Orient Airlines. This would have given him the inside knowledge needed to pull off the job. His brother was convinced he was the one, especially since Kenneth bought a house with cash shortly after the hijacking. He also loved bourbon, just like the man in seat 18C. A flight attendant even said his picture looked the most like the man she saw that night. However, the FBI felt he was too short and did not match the age of the suspect. The search for the truth kept hitting dead ends. The thing is, the descriptions of Cooper were very detailed. 2 flight attendants spent hours talking to him. They described him as being between 5 feet 10 and 6 feet tall, weighing around 170 to 180 pounds. He was polite and spoke with an intelligent vocabulary. He did not have a specific accent. This suggests he was well educated and perhaps from the local area. He was calm under pressure, which is a trait often found in military officers or high-level engineers. This matches the tie evidence perfectly. Every time a new suspect is found, the world holds its breath, hoping the mystery is finally solved. But the DNA remains the ultimate judge. It has cleared many names and kept the legend alive. Even after the FBI officially closed the case in 2016, amateur sleuths continue to hunt for the truth. They look at old records and use new technology to scan the woods. They are looking for a ghost that has been running for over 50 years. The list of suspects is long, but the real man might still be hiding in plain sight. The survival debate and the final verdict. The biggest question in the entire case is whether the man survived the fall. Special Agent Larry Carr, who took over the case in 2007, was convinced that Cooper perished that night. He argued that no experienced jumper would have gone out in a trench coat and loafers into a freezing storm. The wind chill would have been well below zero. Jumping into a forest at night without a steerable parachute is almost a guarantee of a bad ending. The FBI believed he likely did not even have the chance to open his chute before hitting the trees or the water. But here is the deal. If he perished, where is the gear? Parachutes are made of tough material that does not rot away easily. If a man and 2 large parachutes hit the ground, something should have been found by hunters or hikers over the last 50 years. The fact that nothing has turned up makes the survival theory very popular. Some people believe he was a master of survival who had a plan for the ground. Maybe he had a car waiting or a secret camp. The lack of a body is the strongest argument for his success. There is also the possibility that he was not a skilled jumper at all, but just very lucky. He might have landed in a tree and walked away with nothing but a few bruises. He could have changed his life, moved to a different state, and never told a soul. This would explain why no one ever found him. He could have lived a quiet life as a manager at an engineering firm, exactly as the tie evidence suggests. He would have been the perfect neighbor, hiding a $200,000 secret in his basement. What most people do not realize is that the statute of limitations for the original crime actually ran out years ago. However, a grand jury indicted him for a different federal crime that has no time limit. This means if he walked out of the woods today, he could still be arrested. But at this point, he would be in his late 90s. The window for a legal ending is closing fast. The story has moved past the courtroom and into the world of folklore. Dan Cooper is no longer just a man. He is a symbol of the ultimate escape. The investigation might be closed, but the conversation will never end. We are missing key details that only one man knows. We wonder if this all happened overnight or if it was a plan, years in the manor. The thing is, the more we learn about the rare metals on his tie and the technical skill of the heist, the more we see a brilliant, desperate mind at work. It was a moment in time where someone took a massive risk and won, leaving the rest of us to stare at the clouds and wonder, could a brilliant engineer really pull off the perfect crime and vanish? The DNA says he was an insider, but the Woods kept his secrets. Do you think he survived? Like and subscribe for more mysteries.